I will be taking very basic beginners level Docker session, and you can kickstart your container journey today itself. I got many requests on my LinkedIn and Twitter profile asking how they can start their DevOps journey or how they can learn about containers. So I thought of starting this series from today. So now what I'll be doing is I'll be taking part 1, part 2, part 3, like that, and so on every weekend or maybe weekdays, never know. So today, from the next sessions onward, I will try to make this session more hands-on. But today, as this is very beginners and starting part one session, so what I'll do is today I will tell you a little about what is Docker, why we need to use Docker, and how Docker works as a solution, and what are containers, and how containers are different from virtual machines. And we will be talking little about Docker Hub, and I will be explaining, and we'll be playing little around Docker Hub. And then I will show you, we will start with very basic commands today using Play with Docker. You can also try to follow me. And if you have any questions and queries, there is Sangam and Sayam to help you. Even I will be helping you after my session. I will take few questions. If Sayam and Sangam has not answered, some questions are left, then I will take it up definitely. And in between, if you're facing any issues to run Docker commands, so you can paste your output in the chat, and Sayam and Sangam are there to help you out. So let's learn today what is Docker. So whenever I think of Docker, so these are few key points that come into my mind. So the first point which comes into my mind is Docker is a company, Docker Inc., and it is container runtime and orchestration engine. Yes, of course, it is open source as well. So Docker was founded by Solomon Hykes. As you can see in the PPT, he is the one. I'm moving my cursor. So he's the one who founded Docker. And so in 2013, Dot Cloud was rebranded as Docker. So when Docker was started, it was known as Dot Cloud, but later on, it was rebranded as Docker. So currently, there are two editions available in Docker, that is Community Edition and Enterprise Edition. So yes, Community Edition is free, Enterprise Edition is chargeable, and currently Mirantis last year, 2019, Mirantis has occupied and this Enterprise Edition. So they have acquired basically these Enterprise Edition. And here I'm moving my cursor again. He's Rob, who is the CEO of Docker. So this was all about Docker. What is Docker? And coming to the next part, what is the need of Docker? Why we need Docker? You everybody must be thinking, like every developer must be thinking, we are doing our task easily, everything is going fine. But then, what is the need of Docker? So here I would like to explain you taking an example of a developer named Bob. Suppose there is a developer named Bob, and he need to develop a full end-to-end, full stack end-to-end application using, as you can see in this on the screen. So this is using web server, database, messaging, and orchestration. So you can take example of web server, any web server, suppose HTTPD, and DB as Postgres, and Redis like messaging, and orchestration tool like Ansible. So he needs to develop an application using these four components. So the first problem every developer must face or must be facing these days is the issue of the compatibility with the underlying OS. So Bob was also very much tensed, and he was not knowing how to check, and he wasted a lot of time to check the compatibility with the underlying OS. So now Bob what Bob has to ensure? Bob has to ensure that the compatibility of these different services means web server, database, messaging, or orchestration, Ansible, anything, has to be compatible with the underlying OS. So what he needs to do is every time he need to go back and check the version of the OS, which version of the OS is compatible with all of these four services that are available. Now, secondly, he need to check the compatibility with these libraries and dependencies on this OS. So now this is the second challenge which every developer must faces. Now he's to check the libraries, dependencies, that these are compatible with the underlying OS. So there will be certain times where one service will need one version of the library and the other service will need the other version of the library. So over certain time, developer has to upgrade to the newer version. So Bob has to upgrade these components to the newer version, or need to change DB due to some other requirement, or every time when he need to do make these changes means he need to change the DB, or he need to change he need to upgrade, then he need to follow these steps again and again. Means he need to check the compatibility of these services on the current OS version again and again. Now I have one more scenario. Let's consider now the Bob friend has joined his company, and even he need to run this application now. So what he needs to do is he need to go through the large set of instructions and run over hundreds of commands to finally set up the same application. So that is the problem now Bob friend will face when he will join his organization, when he will join his company. And they both will not be very sure that their application will run same on the dev and prod. So if Bob's application is running in development, so that doesn't provide any guarantee that it will run the same in production as well. So there will be always compatibility issues. And the other part that comes into the picture is maybe Bob's friend is not comfortable with the OS which Bob was using. So again, he need to follow the same steps. So what challenges now you can get from this example which I have provided is they were losing money, they were losing time, so much waste of time. And after running their application in development, they were not sure whether they can run it on production, whether it will performance will be same on the production as well. And it was complex configuration. As I mentioned, when Bob's friend joined the organization, his company, he need to read so many documentations and you need to run hundreds of commands, so much lengthy process and so much complex configuration he need to follow. Yes, and of course, developer productivity, it was lost. And yes, it never provides the app isolation as well. So this was the need of Docker. Now I will tell you how Docker works as a solution of these problems. So yes, of course, as you can see on the screen, Docker helps us to save time, money, and you can just ignore this dev prod parity as well. It simplifies configuration, it increases developer productivity, and it runs application in isolation. But I will tell you how it works and how Docker is a solution to these challenges and problems developers are facing. Developers were facing or facing who are using Docker, they are not facing them. So, what does a Docker do? So, Docker can run each component, as you can see in the screen, in separate container with its own dependencies and libraries. This and on the same VM or OS, but with the separate containers. Now Bob is feeling relaxed now. No more he has to build Docker configuration, these files, long configuration wikis and all. and hundreds of commands. Just what Bob need to do is he need to build a Docker configuration file once, and all developers in his team, even his friend, everyone can start their application with just one simple Docker run command, irrespective of the underlying component. All they need to do is just to make sure that they have Docker installed on their system. So that is the basic need which Docker requires, is that they should have Docker installed on their system. And now what Bob is doing is just he's making a Docker configuration file, and rest of the team is using simple Docker run command. We will see this as well, how it works in a while, these things. So as it is very much clear from the image which I have drawn over here. So you can see, I would like to repeat this point once more, because this is very important base of Docker, how it works. So as you can see, they share the same OS, but they run on the different containers with different libraries and dependency. And as you can see, over the OS, Docker is installed on the system and containers are running. So web server is running in a different container. So if you make changes to the web server, it will not affect the other containers, or no need to make changes again and again. So web server have its own library dependency. Now coming to the second container, it has its own library and dependency. So now, no, there is not that much dependency of the code. So you can run each service with its own dependency, and this is known as containerizing your application. So this was about the solution Docker. Now coming to the containers, I will give you a quick definition. What is container? So containers are basically completely isolated, as they have their own processes, their network, or you can say network interfaces or services. Now, and they have their own mount points as well. So just like VM, except the differences, they all share the same kernel. So now containers are completely isolated, but they are sharing the same OS. So to understand more about how Docker works, let us revisit the concepts of OS. So let me share you one thing. If you look at the OS like Ubuntu, SUSE, CentOS, Fedora, all consist of two things, that is OS kernel and set of softwares. So what is OS kernel responsible for? Kernel is responsible for interacting with the underlying hardware. Well, the OS kernel remains the same, but it's software above it which makes it different. Their system different. So this is how it works with OS kernel. This is how your Ubuntu, SUSE, everything works. So these software may consist of different user interface, different fibers, compilers, file managers. So as I said earlier, that the Docker container share the same kernel. So what does that mean? So let us assume we have a system where the Ubuntu OS and Docker installed over it. So Docker can run any flavor of OS on top of it, as long as they all are based on the same kernel. So if the underlying base is Ubuntu, Docker can run a container based on another's distribution like Debian, Fedora, SUSE, or any other OS. So this is how Docker works. This is very important to know how Docker works. Then only we can move on with the basic commands and you'll get to know more about it. So if you want to know more basics about these containers and all, you can go through my Medium blog. If Sayam and Sangam can paste it, I have written a blog on Medium about the very basic blog, like how Docker works and all. So you can go through that as well, or maybe any other blog in Medium, whichever you feel so. So now the actual difference between the VM and Docker, I will explain you what is the actual difference between the VM and Docker. As I have mentioned earlier also, you can see in this image, uh, like if you'll see on the left hand side image, you can see it is a virtual machine. Now how machine is working is, we have a hypervisor, like you can take any hypervisor over here like EXXI, Microsoft Hyper-V on the hardware, and then we have VMs on them. So what actually happens when we are using virtual machine? So each virtual machine will have their own individual OS inside it, and then dependencies, then libraries, and then over them the application. Thus, overall, virtual you can see in virtual machine they have higher utilization and higher disk space, as each VM is having their own separate OS. So each VM have higher utilization and higher disk space. Why? Because they have their own OS inside it, and it consumes higher disk space, and almost around some gigabytes of disk space. Whereas you can see the right hand side, Docker's Docker container are very lightweight and usually in megabytes bytes in size. You can clearly see the difference in these images. No container has their own individual OS, so these are very lightweight, and just container just have their services and libraries and dependencies. So there are these are megabytes in size, and this allows Docker to boot up really faster as well. In just matter of seconds, you can boot up a Docker system, whereas VM, if you'll try to boot up a VM, it takes minutes, as it needs to boot up the entire OS. When you will boot up a virtual machine, what it will do is it will boot up the entire OS. It need to boot up the entire OS. So it takes minutes. It is heavy. Okay, so this was all about Docker, how Docker works, why we need Docker, how Docker is a solution. I will be taking a quick hands-on lab video with very basic commands. So before that, I think you must know about what Docker Hub is. So if you can see anybody, Sayam and Sangam, any one of you can paste this hub.docker.com, and anybody can go and see it. So what I'll do is I will share my screen again and show you how Docker Hub looks like. So till then, you can go and quickly make your account in the Docker Hub. Okay. So I already have account here. So this is Docker Hub. Here you can see this is Docker Enterprise Edition. These all are available. These containers are available in Enterprise Edition. This is Docker Cloud Edition, Community Edition. So this you can see here, and these are all containers available. And if you want to search any container, you can simply go and type in here. It shows here we have Ubuntu. It is really simple to use, and it shows the on the right hand side, it also shows about how you can pull a Ubuntu image on your VM or on your machine. So this is the command. You can simply copy and paste and do that. These are the supported tags which it is supporting Docker file. So I will get into this part, but before that, let's try to create a repo. So how you can create a repository? You just need to go to the create repo, and you need to select your account. So whatever Docker file name you want to, this repository name you want to give, you can give, and you can write the description. why you want this repo. And the main part over here is visibility. If you don't want anyone to see your repo, what you can do is you can mark it to private. But if you want it to make public, you can just simply go in here and make it public. So it is really simple to do so, and you can go here and just create your repo, and this is the one which I have created just now. So this is how you can create your own repositories on hub.docker.com. It is really important. I would suggest you all to go through this once before starting your Docker journey. It is really important. So now what I am going to do is we'll be starting with some basic Docker commands. So what I'm doing over here is I am using this Play with Docker platform. You can go ahead and get the document. You can install Docker on your system as well. But for now, what we will be doing is we will be using Play with Docker. So anyone, Sangam, Sayyam, you can paste this link in the YouTube so that everybody can start their journey along with me. So now what we can do is I will do is I will add a new instance over here. Wow, we can just start now our Docker commands. So now what I am going to do is I will show you some basic commands. So let's start with the very first command, that is Docker images. With this command, you can see, is there any image currently available in this? So this is very important command. You can just simply go and type here, but as you can see currently no images are present. So what we can do is what I will be doing is I will be pulling a Ubuntu image. So what I'm doing is Docker pull Ubuntu. You can try anything, Alpine, whatever you want. You can go and try pulling it. And what I am doing is along with this, I am giving the version 16.04. I want to pull this Ubuntu image. If you want latest one, you can just give latest over here, or you can just write Docker pull Ubuntu. So whichever image available on Docker Hub with the latest tag, it will be pulled from there. So let's run this command and let's see what happens. So it is pulling the image and it is done. Now you can see there are 4 layers over here. So 4 times pull has happened. Now I will be going back to the Docker Hub and will show you why 4 times this pull happened. So you can go to Ubuntu, simply click on here, and I have pulled 16.04. So I'll be going here. Just spend out some time to look into this, what is happening. I will be telling you why 4 times pull came, why 4 layers are there. So why 4 layers are there, as you can see here, number 1, add Ubuntu. So we are adding this file into this root directory, and the second layer running and then removing. And then this is the third, run set -xc. And the fourth one, if you go down here, what it is doing is it is making a directory over here. So this is how this whole process works. So I would highly recommend that you spend some time and go and read it out. You can just explore more and more over here. So this is what now it happened. It has pulled, it has downloaded newer image for Ubuntu 16.04. Now, how we can see? Let's go. Let's run Docker images command again. Now, as you can see, we have our Ubuntu image with tag 16.04. Tag is nothing, but you can consider this as label, and you can write whatever you want on it and put whatever values you want. So we can use tag to label the version number, person who created, or tag is we can use tag to separate it from the development or production environment, anything. And you can see here it is showing image ID. So what is image ID? Image ID is used to uniquely identify your image. So this is the image ID, and it was created 6 weeks ago. And what is the size? 125 MB. So if you see, this is not the complete image ID. So this is just half. If you want to see your full image ID, so what you can do is you can simply run command docker images and hyphen hyphen no hyphen trunk. So as you can see, this is the full image ID. If you'll run this command, it shows the full image ID. So this is the full image ID. Now you have pulled your own Ubuntu image. Now what I'm going to do is we will be creating our first Docker file. Okay, so let's quickly make one directory over here. Okay, whatever name came, it's fine. Let's move on here into this. So what I'm doing is I made one directory, and now we will be creating our first Docker file. So you can name file anything. So Docker file. Now what I am going to do is I will be okay, insert from Ubuntu so what second line will be so I have written from in capital letters, so it is not mandatory at all, but this is best practice. We must so so that it is readable, we can write it in this capital letter, and this is best practice. Some of the best practices which we can follow over here. So now I have written this, and now we will be installing our Python 3. So run apt-get install by Python 3, and you can give here label as well. That is again not mandatory. So why I am giving this label maintainer? So that everyone will come to know that I have maintained this file, and this is my Twitter account. So we can simply go here and save it. So our very first Docker file is ready. Now how to build it up? So we will simply write. So as you can see, our first line which I mentioned in my Docker file, from Ubuntu 16.04 it has done, and now it is installing Python over it. It will just take few seconds. Okay, so now you can see our Python has installed. So what I'm going to do is now you will see whether it is there or not. So yes, our new repo is there in here. So now if you have noticed, I have used another command for checking this Docker image. So previously I have used Docker images, but now I have used Docker image. So that was a legacy command. Then you might be thinking why I'm teaching you legacy command when there is a new one available. That is so because if you will read some blogs, people currently use Docker images command. Many people use it. So not to confuse you and just to tell you, there is no difference between these two commands. It is just old one as Docker is developing, and they are um, creating new commands as well. So do not get confused between these two commands. So now we can see we have, now what we will do is we will go inside our container. So this is the command: docker container run hyphen it. So here you can see this t over here means sudo tty, and name python container. I have kept it as python container. You can keep whatever name you want, and you can just copy and paste your image id over here. So some error came. Let us see where I have. Okay, hyphen name space. So we are getting inside. Now you can see we are inside our Python container. Now what we are going to do is I will just write one very short script, as this is not a coding uh, thing. So we'll be writing a very short Python script over here, and you can just go in here and I will be doing hello. So you can see Vim is not installed, Vim is not present in that. So simply you can do apt get apt install Vim. So I'm installing Vim in here, and we'll be creating a very short script. Yeah, it's installed. Let's go in here and create a, let's paste a file. Oh, let's do it again. You can also create a script whichever you want. Okay, I will type. I was just copy and pasting it. So what I'm going to do is, okay, so print hello all. So this is what I'll be doing it right now. So escape and Q. So our Python script is ready. Now let's move on. Now let's try to run this script. So how I will run is, because I have installed Python 3. So I will do this. So just to make sure that our Python is running perfectly, I wanted to show this that Docker is reliable. You can install your application on Docker, and look here. Here is best example. It is running perfectly over here. So now let's get out of it. And one more thing which I would like to show is, and then I think I will continue in my part 2 lab. So that will be more of a hands-on lab. So last thing which I wanted to show is, if you want to see the exited containers, so this is the command. As you can see, if you will type only docker ps, you cannot see because that container has exited. So that is the reason -a is required. Then you can see. So I will elaborate this more in my next part. And now I would like to hand over to Sayam um, for the next thing. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Sayam and Sangam, I have not opened YouTube channel. I will stop sharing.